Hello teachers, and welcome to the third episode of my new series, the ELT Glossary. So if you are taking or planning on taking a TEFL, a CELTA, a Trinity Cert TESOL, a Delta, a JIP TESOL, a Master in TESOL, or maybe you're just interested in furthering your knowledge as an English teacher, you are in the right place. I'm Mary, and in each video you're going to hear 5 brilliant English teachers talking about ELT terms and concepts. So instead of reading an ELT dictionary, you can learn from the best in a very engaging way. You can find all teachers on social media, and some of them, they've got their own teacher training courses and YouTube channels. So don't forget to check their links in the description. And today we are going to start with one of the biggest names in the ELT industry. So get ready to take some notes, because here they come.
Drilling has a bit of a bad reputation in the classroom. The teacher says something, the learners repeat it. It's boring. But drilling does have its uses, especially for practicing pronunciation and for giving confidence to lower level learners. So let's have a look at some different ways of doing it. Firstly, there are repetition drills, where the learners say exactly what the teacher said. These could be choral drilling, where the whole class say it, individual drilling, just one person, or group drilling or pairs. You could also try a chain drill, where the teacher starts and nominates one learner, they repeat and nominate someone else. You can do all of these at different volumes, like whisper drills or shouting drills, to add a bit of an element of fun to it. The other repetition drill that can be really helpful is what's called a mutter drill or a mumble drill. The teacher gives a model and then all of the learners repeat it 4 times, quietly under their breath. This works even better online. You just have to get them to hit mute. Drilling doesn't have to be just about repeating what the teacher said. Here are 3 other kinds of drills which are maybe a little bit more meaningful, where the teacher gives a cue and the learners answer. We could have question and answer drills to practice adjacency pairs. How are you? Very well, thank you. Substitution drills, where the learners have to use different vocabulary. London is a big city, Tokyo. Tokyo is a big city. Beautiful, Tokyo is a beautiful city. And transformational drills, where the learners have to change a grammatical form. I go to the cinema every week. Last week. I went to the cinema last week. Tomorrow. As a bit of advice on drilling, keep it short and snappy. Don't let it go on too long. Make sure the learners understand what they're saying and have fun with it. If you're enthusiastic, it does really help.
Hello, my name is Charlie from Charlie's Lessons, and we're looking at testing. And when we talk about testing with English language teaching, we often talk about 2 different types. These are formative and summative. Now, what's the difference between formative and summative assessment or evaluation? Very simply, formative happens during a course and summative happens at the end of a course. By nature, formative tests are usually low stakes. This means that there is little pressure placed on the students, or there is little value placed on the test the student is doing. Whereas summative tests are high stakes, and this means there is a lot of pressure placed on the students. Here are some examples of formative assessments that you may already be doing with your students in class. If you're using platforms like Kahoot and quizzes, where you're quizzing your students on vocabulary or grammar that you've taught in class at the end of each class in a fun and light-hearted way, then this could be considered as formative assessment. If you do exit tickets with your students, this is another example. Examples of summative assessments are standardized tests, maybe unit tests or progress tests. If you're preparing your students to do a Cambridge or Trinity exam, these exams are designed as summative assessments as well. Well, how do we use these 2 types of tests in our classroom? Well, as teachers, we use formative assessments to provide feedback for our students. As formative assessments happen during the course, then there is an opportunity for the teacher to modify or restructure the class or the course content with the needs of the students in mind. With summative assessments, assessments, because they happen at the end of the year, the objective here is not to give feedback to the students directly, but for the teachers and academic managers to make decisions about the future of the student. Perhaps they need to repeat that year, or they can continue to the next grade or level. In my opinion, you need to make all testing formative. This means that you as a teacher get some valuable information on how you can improve your course, and also it gives the students that feedback they need immediately during the course so they can make the improvements necessary.
Top-down processing techniques. Well, these refer to a set of receptive subskills that we apply in order to access a listening or a reading text. In other words, using our schema and external knowledge or any background information to understand a text that we are reading or listening to. This contrasts with bottom-up processing skills that focuses more on reconstructing form, i.e. trying to decipher a text word for word, sound by sound. Top-down processing skills, on the other hand, relies a bit more on our context or background knowledge and drawing on what we already know in order to reconstruct meaning. So examples of how we do this in practice would be, for example, when we look at a title of a text, headings, pictures, keywords, and we try to predict what we think the content of the text would be about, or looking up some information about the topic of the text and then accessing that text to see if the same points are being mentioned, even going down to our skimming for gist and then applying our schema there to see if what we predicted was what we think we saw in the text as well. Those are all kind of examples of top-down processing. Now, in the classroom, helping learners develop and apply top-down techniques is very useful as it allows you to bring in your learners' prior knowledge or allow them to share ideas with each other or research the topic before reading or listening so that they can better decode meaning while not getting too distracted or put off by any unfamiliar language items that they may come across when they're reading or listening, at least in the first encounter. It goes without saying that later exercises in the class could focus more on bottom-up processing skills, but once learners have already gained a strong understanding of the content first.
Dogme ELT, also known as Teaching Unplugged, is the label that has been attached to an approach to teaching that rejects the current dependence on grammar-based course books. Instead, it promotes a task-based learning methodology in the tradition of the communicative approach, as it was originally envisioned. That is, the starting point of instruction should be the learner's own meanings, that the language syllabus should emerge rather than be predetermined, and that you learn a language by using it. Dogme borrowed its name from the Dogme 95 movement, a group of Danish filmmakers who vowed to rid cinema of a dependence on technology and artifice, and to produce films using minimal means but for maximum effect. Accordingly, Dogme ELT argues for a pedagogy of bare essentials, that is, a pedagogy unburdened by an excess of materials and technology, a pedagogy grounded in the local and relevant concerns of the people in the room. This philosophy was subsequently articulated as 3 core principles. Dogme is about teaching that is conversation-driven, that is materials-light, and that focuses on emergent language. Critics of Dogme point out that working without materials benefits only experienced native speaker teachers, and typically those who are teaching small classes of adults in cultures where there may be a greater tolerance for a non-book standard methodology. In their defense, proponents of a Dogme approach argue that they are not so much anti-materials as pro-learner, and thus align themselves with other forms of learner-centered instruction and critical pedagogy.
We're going to be looking into ellipsis. Now you're probably thinking, what is an ellipsis? Is when, let's say for example, you want to omit certain words from either a quotation or maybe from a certain piece of material. Normally you will see this if you have to talk about like a long piece of passage or like a long bit of dialogue, or maybe a long paragraph, and you think, you know what, this is too much information for me to remember. So what you might normally do is you would try to cut some of it out, and you would omit some information, but you try to make it more easier for you to explain to another person. Now, of course, if somebody notices that something is missing, or you tell them, listen, I don't have all the information, but you can always go online and check it, or you can ask this person for for all the information. You know, when you're reading a book, or your favorite comic book, or even when you're playing your favorite video game and you start to notice your characters having a dialogue moment or conversation, you notice 3 little dots just in the middle of their conversation, and that's what it is. Normally we will use this in many different ways. One of the ways that we actually use this is when you're having a pause in your speech. Now, when you're having a pause in your speech, particularly when you're reading it, it's usually seen as different things. One, you are pausing for maybe a bit of dramatic effect, or you're pausing because you're thinking about something, or, and this is very common, you pause because you are hesitant about something. So that's how we actually use ellipsis, and I hope you found this very, very useful.
Yeah, and that's it for today. So Jo, Charlie, Mahtab, Ricardo, and Richard, thanks a lot for taking your time to help me with this project. And don't forget, if you are a qualified English teacher and you want to be in the next video, just send me a message. Happy teaching, guys.
I'm just sitting here